It was a crisp autumn evening in New York City, and the streets outside Studio 8G at 30 Rockefeller Plaza were abuzz with fan energy. Inside the iconic studio, the crew of Late Night with Seth Meyers was putting the final polish on the set and preparing for another evening of comedy and A-list guests. Among those scheduled for an appearance was comedian Mike Birbiglia, the Massachusetts-born funnyman who had become a staple on the late-night circuit with his unique blend of self-deprecating humor and biting social commentary. Birbiglia's successful comedy albums, books, and stints as an actor and filmmaker had elevated him to near household name status in recent years. Backstage, Birbiglia was going through his pre-show routine of anxiety-calming meditation and vocal warm-ups when one of Meyers' producers poked his head into the green room with a slightly panicked expression. "Hey Mike, sorry for the late curveball here," the producer began, wringing his hands slightly, "but Seth just got word that Prince Harry is going to be one of our lead guests tonight too." Birbiglia's eyebrows lifted in surprise. While it was par for the course to share the guest lineups with high-profile celebrities, British royalty was a different level entirely. Prince Harry? As in the Duke of Sussex and Meghan Markle's husband? The producer nodded. Apparently he's in town promoting some new memoir he's releasing soon. Seth just got the request this afternoon from his PR team about adding him on with you tonight. Birbiglia let out a low whistle. He, like the rest of the world, was well aware of the endless controversies that had engulfed the former royal ever since the couple's self-exiled Megxit from Buckingham Palace 3 years prior. No matter where one stood on Harry and Meghan's grievances, their subsequent behavior had increasingly alienated even their most ardent supporters. From the bizarre TV spectacles to the endless scored memoirs and bitter leaks about the royals, the Duke and Duchess's handling of their post-palace transition had become a protracted exercise in oversharing self-obsession. Harry in particular drew sympathy from few outside the most extreme fringes of the Sussex Squadron fan community. Well, this could certainly make for an interesting evening alongside the Prince of Pity himself, Birbiglia mused, rubbing his chin thoughtfully as creative gears began spinning. Unless the show has express rules about avoiding a certain controversial figure as guests. The producer's expressive shrug spoke volumes about the network's motivations. Hey, he may be a total punchline at this point, but he's still the son of the future king who will bring some heavyweight publicity cachet, the producer admitted, perhaps a bit too candidly. As long as you two guests can coexist on stage and there aren't any fireworks, it should make for one hell of a spontaneous show. With that, the age-old entertainment dichotomy of ratings versus ethics revealed itself once more. Birbiglia pondered the proposition, wondering if the risky prospect could provide the perfect opportunity to call out the disgraced Duke on his endless deluge of pity-craving conduct, right to his smarmy privileged face. No, you know what? We should absolutely make the most of this unexpected matchup, Birbiglia decided. But you may want to get the censors ready, because I've got a few thoughts I'd like to fun-run for our whiny guest. As the late-night producer slunk away covering an apprehensive grin, Birbiglia felt curiously emboldened. It was time for the beleaguered Prince of Pity to receive some long-overdue royal roasting, from one of America's sharpest maestros of barbed punchlines. Based on Mike Birbiglia's experience as a seasoned comedian and his stated determination to call out Prince Harry's perceived flaws, he seems up for the challenge of roasting the controversial royal figure. However, it's a very high-pressure situation with potential to backfire, so Birbiglia will need to walk a tightrope in delivering effective jokes without crossing any unforgivable lines. Here's how it could play out. As showtime neared and the studio audience began filtering in, Birbiglia felt the adrenaline kick in backstage. He was a pro at dealing with hecklers and rolling with unexpected punches, but openly mocking someone of Prince Harry's global celebrity presented its own set of risks. Go too hard with insult comedy at the Duke's expense and he could come across as bitter and punching down at an admittedly troubled figure. But play it too safe and timid, and the highly anticipated showdown would be a letdown, rendering him as toothless as the palace courtiers Harry himself had railed against. The key is to be devastatingly accurate without being personally cruel, Birbiglia reminded himself as he reviewed his legal pads of Harry zingers. Stick to roasting his wildly tone-deaf public behavior and leave the cheap shots about his personal life or appearance off limits. As the taping kicked off, Birbiglia tried to put the upcoming Harry confrontation out of his mind and focus on delivering a solid first half of comedy to warm up the crowd. When Seth Meyers opened the first act by acknowledging the surprise royal guest drop-in scheduled for later, hearty cheers and jeers demonstrated the audience's own divided opinions. "We've got a huge get tonight, folks, someone who's maybe accomplished nearly as much as I have with my own lackluster fame," Meyers quipped in anticipation of the historic face-off to come. Finally, after bantering with Birbiglia about his latest tour and pandemic lifestyle, it was time for the highly anticipated interview segment with the Duke of Sussex. Handed off a plush food court microphone, Birbiglia couldn't help but feel like a televised court jester being prepped for his big royal roasting moment. Harry emerged from the backstage entranceway smiling and waving to a mix of applause and unmistakable boos and jeers. He gamely played to the crowd, that perpetual teddy bear persona clashing with the steadily more polarizing reputation he'd been cultivating. As the taping rolled on, Meyers initially played things relatively safe with Harry, allowing him to plug his new memoir and make a few canned self-deprecating quips about rejoining the real world after leaving the palace. For his part, the Duke was his usual combination of overly casual body language and faux humility. When it finally came time for Birbiglia's portion of the hot seat interview, the comedian decided to strike immediately with his most verbally punishing material after shaking Harry's hand. "Your Highness, if that's still an appropriate way to address someone who's abdicated every last perceivable shred of highness," Birbiglia began to some nervous titters. "It's been said you've shown the world a whole new side of the British royal family none of us ever wanted to see, the utterly clueless, self-pitying, arrogantly unself-aware one airing every possible grievance like a raving street person." The studio audience gave an audible gasp as Harry's affable TV smile briefly froze in place, seemingly stunned by the blistering comic assault. Sensing he'd landed his first verbal blow, Birbiglia instantly pivoted to his rapid-fire joke crescendo. I mean, one whiny interview bomb dropping after the next. Book deals, podcasts, TV spectacles, all dedicated to being the world's most privileged crying towel in print. Has there ever been a more fortifying profile of courage than someone born into stupendous wealth and splendor before piecing out to sunny California in a fox-philosophic fury of self-appointed oppression? By this point the crowd had divided into near equal-sized camps of cheers and gasps, while Harry seemed to become impassively stoic as Birbiglia's comedy cyclone showed no sign of relenting. Honestly, how big of a self-addicted infant do you really have to be to double down and keep regurgitating the most mundane stories of your semi-hard-knocked life to anyone who'll pay for the ghost-ridden tales of your common rich person's woe? Because if ever there was a punchline in human form, a real-life embodiment of sad male actress grotesquerie, that's been you for the last couple of years.